Okay, so this video talks about how to use Excel 365 online, and this first assignment is analyzing frequencies. These are supplemental exercises for an Introduction to Statistics course. Note that this assignment uses the cloud-based online Excel, not a desktop version. For my students at BHCC, this assignment is on Moodle and available to you. If you would like a copy of the assignment and you're on YouTube, there is a link below where you can obtain it. The purpose of assignment 1 is to be able to make frequency tables and histograms. Without Excel, this would be very difficult to do on paper. A frequency table summarizes data by showing how often each value occurs in a data set. A histogram is a graphical version of a frequency table. The skills we're going to learn here are frequency tables with a pivot table, frequency table using functions, and histograms. First, let's look at how to make a frequency table with a pivot table. Pivot tables, by the way, are a generalist way of taking a raw data set and doing a summary feature with it. They're part of Excel. So this method that we're going to use, we're going to take our raw data and we're going to make a summary table called a pivot table. And that's what we're going to use as our frequency table. This method works for categorical data and for discrete quantitative data that has a relatively small range of values, like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, instead of like 0 to a million. But it's limited in that it doesn't work for continuous data. So the first thing to do is to have your data up and ready in Excel. And I have here my data in Excel already uploaded. And the first tab is categorical frequencies. Okay. And the blue tabs I do in the demo video, and then the yellow tabs are the student assignment. And all of the data should be in a column form, typical of row column data storage. Next, to make the frequency table, we're going to select the data range. Don't select the entire column because you'll create a little bit of a mess. There may be extra things in the column that you don't want there. And if you select the entire column, it's easier, but it will also give you like this blank row in the frequency table that doesn't look very nice. Next, we're going to go to Insert and then Pivot Table. Let me show you how to do this. Okay, I'm in Excel. I'm going to use the categorical frequency first tab. The categorical variable here is going to be manufacturer. The other variables, protein and fat, are both discrete. And name is not really something that's a categorical variable. It's more like almost an identifier. So what we want to do is we want to select our data. Just the data. And go Insert, Pivot Table. Now it's sensing the data that's selected. So this right here is the C1 to C77. Yes, I did include the header too. We want that. Now, it's going to let you choose where you want the pivot table to be placed. For these assignments, just put it in the existing worksheet. And what we're going to do is pick a location sort of to the right of the data, like right here would be great. And then it will pick up the reference. So this is cell G2. And then OK. Now it's going to give us this blank pivot table thing, which unfortunately is kind of covered up. Okay. So notice that it has sort of like, this is basically a blank canvas. And then it's picked up the manufacturing row. So now that we've created our pivot table and set it there, we want to fill it with data. So now what we're going to do is we're going to set it up. We're going to drag the column with our variable name into the rows area, and then we're going to drag it into the values area. So let me show you what this means. Okay. So I'm going to take, this is my little canvas thing. It's sensing the manufacturer column. I'm going to take this and drop it into the rows. And I'm going to take this and drop it into the column, into the values rather. There you go. It's automatically sensing with the categorical data to do the counts. So this actually is in and of itself a basic frequency table, but we also want relative frequencies. So we're going to actually repeat what we just did, and we're going to drop a second version of the same variable into the values column. And then we're actually going to modify that to turn it into displaying the percents or relative frequencies. Finally, when we're done with this, we're going to adjust the table, just to adjust the labels and stuff to make it look better. So let's finish this in Excel. Okay, so I'm going to take this a second time and drop it, and it's going to create a completely redundant count column. But what I'm going to do, and this is somewhat of a trick, go over and look, take a careful look at this little values option thing. This little right arrow, click down and go on value field settings. Show value as, and you're going to change that to column total. So I had to click on this, which it was just defaulting to, and then show value as and hit OK. Now it's turning percents, which is exactly what I want. Next, and we could have actually done this when we were doing this, but you want to actually adjust the column headers. This is going to be relative frequency. And there you go. That is a frequency table for a categorical variable. Next, frequency tables for discrete variables are done the same way as categorical variables. So here I have the same data, the serial data, and two discrete variables, protein and fat. Let's do a frequency table for fat. Again, I'm going to select the data, which I can do with this little green arrow thing. Just go lasso it with this little box selector thing. Oops, no, I'm not going to do that. That's actually, oh, hang on, so go out here, be careful with these little boxes. So I'm going to select the data, not like do any kind of fill thing with it. That was actually filling it with the variable heading. Okay, so now I've selected just the data, and I want to choose fat too, so I'm going to do this again. It's actually good that you watch me doing this because, yeah, it's a little tricky. Oops. That was actually what that was doing, is it's taking this little green box and it's like copying it over, but we don't want to do that. We just want to select our data. So I'm going to select this, which I think is easier with the little arrows than with the mouse. Okay. Okay. So that's the data. Now I'm going to go to Insert, Pivot Table. Again, it's sensing the data that I selected, which is E1 to E77. I'm also going to want to put it on an existing worksheet, and it's sensing to do it in E1. You don't want to do that because it's going to overwrite it there. So let's go like over here, click down here, and then go there. And then that's a good place to put it. So it's going to put the pivot table starting in G2. And there's our pivot table. Now, again, we're going to select our variable and put it in rows. And again, we're going to select our variable and bring it down to values. But because this is a discrete variable, it's actually giving us a sum, not a count. We want a count. So we're going to go over here. We're going to select this and the little red little drop down menu thing. We're going to go to value field settings. And we're going to do summarize values by count, which is what we want. Now we have our counts of the frequencies of 0, I think it's 0 grams of fat, 1 gram of fat, 2, 3. There don't appear to be any 4 grams of fat. This is servings, like data on your serving size of cereal. So anyways, but we still want relative frequency. So to do that, we want to take our variable, drop it down again. And we want to change this to count. So now we have two redundant columns with count. What we want to do is change this one to be relative frequency. And so we go over here, we select it, and we go to show values as, and we change this to percent of column total. Now we have what we want, except we also want to relabel the columns. This one you can call N, and this one is relative frequency. And there you go. Right. So that was the frequency with a pivot table, which works for discrete and categorical data. Next, we need to talk about what you can do when you have continuous data. Um, in the desktop version of Excel, when you're in a pivot table, you can actually just click on it and get a grouping. The online version doesn't do that. So you have to use a different technique. So we're going to use functions, specifically the frequency function. First, have the data up and ready in Excel. Next, we have to actually sort of fiddle with the data and determine bin sizes. So let's talk about what this means. Okay, so I switched over to the continuous frequency example, and then this is salary data. So if I tried to just do a regular pivot table on this, it would be like an absolute disaster. So I'm doing that just for fun, but because salary is a continuous variable, it's not going to do anything except basically recreate the data set. So I don't want to do that. That's not going to work. No pivot table here. So what you have to do instead is kind of look at the data. Let's delete this pivot table out. And you can use functions. There's a function called count that will give you the sample size, which is just how many rows there are, but it's easier to just use function count. So there's 87 rows. And then I'm going to look at the minimum value. And there's a function called min, M-I-N. And again, use function. I'm using the function up here, so I'm doing equals and then min, and then click on the column, and then max. And then equals, and then max, and again, click on the column. Now, why am I doing this? Because I want to look at my data. So the lowest salary is $59,078. The highest salary is $165,000. So we want to start with like 50 to 60,000 and then like 60 to 70 and 70 to 80. And we want to do bins of 10,000. So what we're going to do is a column called bin. Now, for reasons I don't quite understand, Excel you only have to do like the right side of the bin. So I only have to do like the higher end. So I'm going to do like 60,000. So let's do 50,000 just. And then 60,000. So it's really, it would be like everything less than this, and then like 50,100, like, but for whatever reason, Excel only needs the upper bin for the bin array. So I'm gonna do this, and I'm just gonna put this bin in 70,000. And then when you lasso these and pull down, you get this thing called a flash fill, which is really cool. And you can actually do that here. You just have to, I don't quite know how to explain like how to actually select and drag these, like other than just like kind of playing with them and getting them to do what you want. This little handler thing in the bottom right corner is like this magic thing. So I'm at 150 and I want to go up to 170, so I want two more. And I don't have the greatest, like, adeptest old lady fingers. There we go. So essentially, we have to manually do our like frequency intervals here. But we only need, these are kind of like for decoration. So these are our salary ranges, less than 50,000, $50,000, $1 to 60,000, and so forth. So what I want is I want to take this data and I want to determine like how many of them are 50 to 60,000, 60 to 70,000. And that would kind of be a pain if we did it by hand. Now this only has 87 rows. If it had like 800,000 rows, it would be absolutely impossible to do by hand. So it turns out there's this miraculous function in Excel and I can get frequencies with this. Okay. So the function is equals, again, this is going up here. So I'm going where I want the output to be, which is K3. And I'm going to go up to my little formula bar. I'm going to type equals and then frequency. And then I get this magic function here. Now it wants a data array and a bins array. The data array is this, just the data. It's D2, which is here, and then it goes down to D88. Then I do a comma, and then the bin array is this thing here. And then I do that, and I hit enter, and it magically fills this in. Now, if it didn't fill in like that, you can also drag, like you can drag the formula down from here, and it will do the same thing. And then I have a frequency table with my continuous data. Okay. Now, I just have frequencies here. I would also like relative frequency. And to get that, that's just going to be the frequencies over the 87. So I can just do equals this divided by this. And then I just pull it down, and what it will do is it will fill in the formula, or maybe it won't. No. Okay. I don't want to, this is actually good to illustrate this. I don't want to like do G2 because it's actually going to adjust and do like G3, G4. I just want to type in 87 here. Oops. There we go. And then I want to pull these down carefully. This computer is very difficult to use, the little keypad thing. I think that's why it was on sale. There we go. And then we have our relative frequencies or percent, so like 2.2% are here. We could also right click on this and format it as a percent, so it's a little easier to read. Choose category percent. And there you go. That's our final frequency table for this. And you can like format it with like maybe like a little thing. You could copy this out into a PowerPoint presentation or something as well. Okay. So that's our two methods of doing frequency tables, with a pivot table for discrete or categorical, and then with the frequency function for continuous, because there is no other way to do this in Excel online unless we do it this way. Okay, so that was determining bid size. First I looked at the data, then I set up the bin array, and then I used the frequency function, and then I added a relative frequency column. So that's the frequency table method that we have to use with continuous data in the online version of Excel, because it doesn't do like when you have the desktop version, it will do it like all locally. The online Excel doesn't really have like the mental power to do what the desktop version does. Okay, so the final thing we want to do is histograms, which are graphs of frequency tables. And they are very helpful and useful at looking at distributions of quantitative data. And we'll be using these for many reasons to come after this as well. So to create a histogram, again, you have your data set up in Excel. You're going to select your data range. Now this time we're going to actually do an insert chart, and we're going to insert a specific statistics chart called a histogram. And once we have the histogram done, we're going to adjust the bin widths, adjust the axes labels, and always, at a minimum, if you do nothing else, make sure that your chart titles are like good titles. Excel by default, like when you generate a chart, it's not ready yet. You really have to edit it a little bit. You don't have to go crazy with like all kinds of editing, but you do have to put a title on it. Okay. And then finally, if you want to adjust a little more for the histogram, you can. So let's go into Excel. Okay. So I'm in Excel, and the final blue tab is called histogram. And this is actually just, those, by the way, the little symbols, those are my start and stop cues for my video when I edit it and change screens. So we're going to do it on salary, which is the same data we worked with before. And we kind of actually still need this. You actually really want to do to do like a nice histogram, you actually want to have like the frequency table as well. So we already have this to go by. So let's kind of like follow this a little bit when we do our histogram. So to do the histogram, I'm going to select the data. It's a good practice to select just the data. You can kind of cheat a little and just click on the column, but you can get some messy things if you do that. And actually, if I just click on the column here, let me just check something. Okay, good. If I just click on the column here and then I try to do insert, and then over here, don't just click on these, you can, but these are like shortcuts. I don't like them. It's better to click on the right arrow. It's under the insert menu and then go down to the statistical graph, and this one's the histogram. Actually, it does do it. Sorry, I thought it would give me a blank one, but it will give me a histogram that way. So this is the histogram, but it's kind of a mess. First of all, it's inserted down at like row 80, which we definitely don't want that. We want to move it up. Just drag on it and just move it up. You want these to be kind of at the top of your chart, particularly because your professor, yours truly, um, is gonna go crazy if I have to like look for them all over the place. Okay, so here's our histogram. Um, when we click on this, again, you're gonna get, or you're gonna get like another little like menu, fix it doohickey, um, with all kinds of details on it. These are a little tricky. Like I'm not super duper into like uh, Excel charts, but I do them because I have to. We always want to change the title. Okay, you always want to do that. Um, the reason I'm not super into Excel charts is I actually teach an entire course called Data Viz. We use Tableau. Excel is actually great for basic charts, but it isn't like a real data visualization program at the level that Tableau is. But anyways, so I changed the title. Now all I did, it was a little sneaky. I just clicked on it and then edited it. So I called it histogram, which is actually not what I want to call it. Maybe I do. Let's call it histogram with salary. Okay. Now, this is a mess. It's unlabeled. We want to actually, in particular, change these bins. Now, for reasons I cannot explain, Excel will automatically bin things for histograms, but like Excel Online will bin things for histograms, but it won't make a table. We have to bin them like by hand. So going back to this, we see that our bins like under 50,000, over 170,000. To make this look better, we want to click on this axis here. You probably can't see this, but it's like selecting, like I literally just kind of like, you want to click on these by like, and like find the parts like this right here. If you look subtly, this is selecting the y-axis. And then when I click down here and play with this, this is selecting, oops, that's actually selecting the bars. So what I want to do is select the x-axis, which I'm not doing a very good job of. There we go. And see, it's actually selecting the x-axis. So I go to this and horizontal axes, that's the x-axis. What I want to do is I want to go all the way down to the series salary thing. Okay. And it has all these like weird bin things that you'd never figure out unless somebody told you. So for bins, I'm going to do bin width of 10,000. Because that's my salaries, like 50,000 to 60,000. I'm going to do underflow bin of 50,000. And overflow bin of 170,000. And then it's going to give me like nice label. Well, no, it didn't. Hang on. It did last time. Wait. Hang on. Let's try that again. Let's try number of bins and then 12. Bin width 10,000. Bin data labels. This will actually give me my frequency. Okay, so I fiddle with this. I thought I'd been able to do this before, but what I'm trying to do is adjust these bins to like 50 to 60,000, 60 to 70,000. Um, it should be possible going under series and then working with these features here, except it doesn't seem like I can do it with this one. And it actually suggested when I look things up to instead go to here and then do a bar chart of this, which I'm not going to do right now because we haven't done bar charts. But you can adjust these and you should. I just can't get nice numbers. So I can click on this and adjust it, and I can do like um under series. I can do like more bins and I can do like bin width like 10,000. It will do that, which is good. It just won't do like a nice even 10,000 that I want. Um, but you can adjust this. It doesn't work like I would like it to. The other thing that you can do with this is you can adjust the axes labels. So display axes, that's just this for the vertical axes. And then you want to put an axes title. So this is just counts right here. And then this is the horizontal axes. And what we can do with this is just label it salary. And the histogram gives us what the distribution would look like. And if you change the number of bins, which is kind of the important thing down here, um, it will give you like sort of like better, like if I change it to 5,000, then I'm gonna have like more like, so it gives you like a better kind of like more zoomed in view of the distribution. This, if you stretch the graph, then you can read all of these, see how that changes. And so you can see that like the salary is kind of like mostly distributed on the low end and not that many people make that much money. The other thing you can do is you can click on the bars and you can change the colors, which is always fun. Okay. And so that we're going to do graphs next time and talk more about graphs. But these are the basic ways of summarizing data. These are your frequency distributions. Again, so what we did is a recap: categorical frequency distribution using pivot tables, discrete data distribution using pivot tables, continuous frequency distribution using that frequency function, and then last but not least, a histogram, which histograms are typically done on continuous data, by the way, because you're looking for the distribution of them. A histogram on the continuous data and looked at how like modifying the bins and stuff changes that. Okay, thanks.